Hello, this is Dr. Susan Swam, Executive Director of Now I See a Person Institute, and I have David Abramovich on today, faculty member at Now I See a Person Institute. And today we're interviewing amazing, wonderful mother and hearing a bit about the journey with her children to success. So, thank you so much for joining us today, wonderful person.
Hi, thank you.
Hi, thank you. So we were talking a little bit about before we started recording, just kind of um, catching up on life and things like that. And we came to a point that I was like, oh, I think we need to put this, we need to start recording now because we were just having like these pretty amazing conversations. And we were talking about with one of your children that um, there was a little bit of pushback in the schools, and you had talked about that, about parental responsibility and some of those types of things. So I don't know if you want to come in there or if you would like to, like, the floor is yours. So however you want to create this conversation is the way that I want this conversation to be for you.
Okay.
Okay.
Um, my son was always very strong-minded and very able,
Mhm.
but when it came to being in an institution like daycares and then later school, there was always confrontation with teachers, with his opinions, and as a mother that was raised that the system is right and we need to bring the kids into the system and discipline them, and they need to be either good boys or girls or bad boys or girls, and the teachers and the principals are always right. I was pushing him to that direction, and I feel like some of the challenges I came across later was a result of not being on his side and listening to him enough.
Mhm.
And it got to a point that the system was crushing him. And he was bullied and he was miserable and he lost his self-esteem completely.
Mhm.
And at one point, I understood that the first thing I had to do is take him out of school because I realized the school cannot protect him and it's not a good environment for him.
Mhm.
But my next step was I literally prayed and I asked for help. And I
Mhm.
said, I want to be a good mom. I feel like I failed my son and he deserves a good mother. And I am not being a good mother.
Mhm.
And thank God, I met two people. 2 days later, I met people that changed my life, and one of them is Dr. Swim.
Mhm.
And in the beginning, I think, very controlling and kind of ashamed of my son. Why is he behaving like this? And I felt like it's something that I should be ashamed of.
Mhm.
And Dr. Swim taught me that he deserved to be loved just the way he is.
Mhm.
And I was trying to see him through your lenses
Mhm.
and understand what you see and why I don't see it. And then I realized I have a lot of work to do, my own self. And I think most of the kids, their issues, yes, the system is corrupt. Absolutely.
Mhm.
The system is not, doesn't have the kids' well-being as a priority. But it comes down to parents' responsibility. And I had to look in the mirror and see things I really didn't like. And I had to work on myself and find my demons and deal with them and see my son not as a a child that needs to be disciplined, but as a person that deserve to be respected and deserve to be listened to. And he was very cute. He says, the teachers expect me to respect them, but they disrespect me.
Mhm.
So when you have an open mind, you understand that it's true. They should be respected. They should have the, if we as an adult ask the kids to listen to us, then we should listen to them first. And we don't. We're so busy. We're caught up in life and cooking and dishes and running around and all our responsibilities, and we don't really sit down and listen and give our kids some quality time. And I think that is the key for success.
Mhm.
Because if your kid has a solid home that he has his back, even in a terrible school, they'll be successful.
Mhm.
They're gonna have better tools. That's my opinion.
Mhm.
So
You know, one of the things that this made me think of actually was the first time we met, and those first weeks after that. And, you know, in listening, I think that David always, the two of us would say, although we've had lots of other faculty that still aren't faculty, but we're also a training institute, so some of our learners will come and go. And one of the things is that when you're talking with the child or the teenager and the parents are there, it's a different conversation that is happening at home. And you're able to hear different things because we kind of help provide that space where they do have a voice. And so, you know, I remember a situation that um that, you know, some of your family members were with us, and I remember just finding out about how it was for your child to be in those settings. So the settings of either a school or maybe a summer daycare or something like that. And and they were miserable. They were just miserable. And there was it was like this silent misery because they wanted so much to participate, but they just didn't see a way to do that. There wasn't anybody that was really inviting to them. And so they would, you know, I think, you know, one of the things that we talked about that, you know, they would do their own thing that was a very wonderful thing that every parent would want them to be doing, which was like reading. But that reading didn't help with them the socialization, and it was very complex. It wasn't like uh, oh well, your son has ADHD or your son has, you know, autism or Asperger's or any of these neurodivergent disorders that we're waiting in the wings to diagnose him with. And it's always been my fear, and that or and concern. um it was how that I was, first of all, um when I became a clinician, it was in the time that we did not think that the problem was inside of somebody, but it was a systemic problem. Like what are some of the variables that are inducing this to happen? And I think along the way that we're still trying to do that in my field, but we've lost a little bit about that with these big diagnoses, that the children get, and that kind of ignores the suffering that they're having, or that the suffering is due to this or that. And if only we give them the right therapy or the right medication or the right hospitalization, then they won't suffer, when they're suffering over very real things in their minds. And I can also remember, just moving forward, that there was a time that I, wasn't listening, and I remember your child came over to you. This is actually when we were at the ranch and we had more people around, and we were at a picnic table, and your child came over to you and whispered in your ear, and I could hear what he was whispering. It was very low, but I have really good hearing. And then he went to the car, and then I was like, oh my goodness, I was one of those people that was not listening and that I was talking over him. And I remember going over to the car and knocking on the door, and him rolling down the window very, very generously, and I said, I'm so sorry, that I invalidated your voice, and I'll try not to do that. And maybe you can help me not do that if I do that again, but it certainly wasn't on purpose. And he was so forgiving. He so much wanted to collaborate and with adults, but he just didn't have those opportunities.
I know, I remember that. It's a big process. It's a long process.
Mm-hmm.
And what I learned from him
Mm-hmm.
is something that I haven't learned in any school.
Mm-hmm.
I told him one day that I'm blessed to have him as a child, because he was my spiritual guide and helped me to become a better person.
Mm-hmm.
And I truly mean it. I really, really mean it.
Mm-hmm.
When actually, if you look at your child, not as he's mine and I'm ashamed of him because he reflects on me. No, your child, that's how I see my kids. They have their own journey, they're their own people, their own personality. And what I need to provide to them is support, love, and, their physical needs, and just be there for them as long as they need me, and open mind.
Mm-hmm.
And if I do that and set them free to their own journey, they can be their own people.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny that my kids, both of them, from school, they hear it at school, both of them came to me at one point, each one individually, and they wanted to be diagnosed. Why? Because they hear in school,
Mm-hmm.
if you get diagnosed, then you get a different program, so you can get less homework, or you can take pills, and they actually argue with me. They wanted to be diagnosed. Well, my older son, until he finished high school, he really wanted to be diagnosed. And I said, what is that diagnosis going to give you?
Mm-hmm.
What benefit are you going to get from being diagnosed
Mm-hmm.
by people who don't even know you?
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, no, I just need that label. They actually want the label.
Mm-hmm.
They think it's cool to have a label. They think, oh, if you have a label, then you're not just the normal one. You're something different, and they're gonna look at you different. And it's almost popular to have a diagnosis and to pills. That's the popular opinion here.
Mm-hmm.
Being just a normal who you are is not good enough anymore.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I really had to push. Both of them wanted to take some kind of pill And I had to push them back. And I said, you're good as you are. I can write you any label you want. You're just the way you are. And you don't need pills because pills have side effects. And I got them herbal pills that are supportive of their mood. And I told them, when you feel you're moody and when you feel you need some kind of something to relax
Mhm.
or to focus, they
Mhm.
are those capsules. You can take them as much as you need.
Mhm.
You don't need a doctor. You don't need a label for
Mhm.
that.
Mhm.
But it's actually being pushed in school
Mhm.
to diagnose you. Yeah, you have a problem. Let's go and get diagnosed.
Mhm. Mhm.
I'm very grateful, Dr. Swim, that you constantly rejected that and and said that, you know, this is actually not a good idea, because I had no idea. It took me a while to realize those things.
Well, the the issues I think that myself and my colleagues have always had with the issue of diagnosis is that it it like David was talking about before we started recording, but it kind of puts you in this prison of labels, and it defines you as having a disability. And for all the children that we have seen, um, whatever kind of symptoms that they originally came in with, those symptoms dissolved and they transformed into very strong children with self agency. And but in the beginning, it was hard because, pardon me, they also had, most of them had been told, or their parents had been told, that there was something um, wrong with them. And we have seen children um, that came into us previously diagnosed, and that they now report as young adults that that they didn't have any faith in themselves. They didn't have any faith in their own thinking. They didn't have any faith in their own performance. And they thought that a pill or some type of technique could make them into a better person. And when you're thinking about the whole being of a child, you know, it's hard to believe that something like a pill could actually transform them into the person that they would want to be. But they are very easily told that. I don't know if David, you can, come in on this and maybe comment a little bit as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think like um, every child is different, and to try to make everyone the same and say that this child will benefit from this medicine is absolutely absurd. Um, Everybody needs something a little different, and in this case, um, exemplifies that, you know. And we need, sometimes we all children need is just time to mature, time to come into their own.
Mhm.
And this is a perfect example of that, you know. The kindness, the intelligence, the love, all of that was there, the support was there. And when all that exists, uh there's no way that a child will fail. It's just a matter of time and allowing the child to come into their own, develop, and and develop some confidence.
Mhm.
And oftentimes, what happens is we don't let that process to occur because of the way the system is right now, and it's very sad. Um, I don't think I would be where I am today had uh, had my parents not allowed me to develop to the person I am today,
Mhm.
and instead just pigeonholed me and gave me medicine.
Mhm.
So I can definitely understand this story, and this narrative in it strikes deep in my heart.
And there's another thing that I learned through this journey. When my kids were in LAUSD under the clutches of the system,
Mhm.
the only thing that the system is pumping the parents and the students is grades, 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 grades. You need to be good. You need to have high grades, 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 which it's so, it took me a while to get out of that belief.
Mhm.
When I took my son out of the system and started to homeschool them,
Mhm.
I was very scared. I thought I'm going to fail him because
Mhm.
I am not a teacher and I
Mhm.
don't know how to teach. And I was afraid that he's going to be behind in all the subjects and his grades are going to go down and he's going to fail in life.
Mhm.
And then I met other parents that are homeschooling their kids. We had some social meetings and we went to different gatherings and event centers, and I talked to other parents, and I just realized that all this is just not important.
Mhm.
It's not important because every child has different strengths.
Mhm.
Every child develop in a different pace,
Mhm.
and that doesn't make them less or more. It's
Mhm.
just their individuality.
Mhm.
And if my child will be behind in any subject, that doesn't make him fail.
Mhm.
That means he has different strengths.
Mhm.
The importance of the grades went down completely, and I understood it's all about control,
Mhm.
getting money to the schools,
Mhm.
and pushing the kids instead of having normal childhood and have time to develop. All they do and spend their time on homework, 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 and they lose their childhood.
Mhm.
I realized that, and I
Mhm.
found out that what's a lot more important is their well-being, their
Mhm.
self-esteem,
Mhm.
their social skills, their heart. It's a lot more important than all this. I changed the way I parent them.
Mhm.
For both of them, I told them it's school is your responsibility. If you don't pass, I don't even use the word fail because for
Mhm.
me, failing is not trying. That's failure. If you try, that's good enough for me.
Right.
And I told them, if you want to have good grades, work harder. If you
Mhm.
don't get good grades, then you deal with your teacher or, you know, do whatever needs to be done. And if it's not important to you, that's fine with me.
Mhm.
So I was not anymore, I didn't have to police them and I didn't have to um, fight with them on homework.
Yes.
Did you do your homework? You didn't do your homework. Remember during COVID when they were home, both of
Yeah.
them were home, and you were telling me that the biggest problem parents have is that the kids don't learn. That's the biggest fights
Yes.
family have are
Yes.
because kids don't do, they can't comprehend and they can't catch up with the school. And we
Yes.
didn't have that. We didn't have that because I changed my look on what school is and what's important in life. So I was there to support them and not to fight with them.
Right.
And if they couldn't do their homework, it was fine. Don't do your homework.
Yes.
So my grade will go down. I don't care. I
Yes.
don't want to feel miserable all evening just for a little grade. And let me tell you something, Dr. Swim. My oldest child
Mhm,
got what he wanted in college and financials, not because he worked day and night.
mhm,
No, because he did what he's supposed to do.
mhm,
He did the minimum not to fail, and somehow he was helping other students in a lot of the classes.
mhm,
And he put more effort in being a good human being
mhm.
around other kids. And he got the higher grade for that, for
Right.
being a better person, not for working day and night on his homework.
Right. Right. You know, it's so lovely to hear you talk about kind of how you were conditioned to think about parenting, and then, parenting from this, I'm just gonna call it like this strength-based, child-driven participation. Because, with I've been doing now clinical work for 40 years this year. And, one of the things that we would always see is that at the beginning of, you know, like during the summer, your referrals would dip down because like the children and the parents weren't having conflict. Once school started, that conflict started, and it could create some very serious dynamics within the relationships, to the degree that you would have children wanting to die because of some of the pressure. You have both parents working, and like you were talking, like there's not a lot of time to, and you're not really taught to like listen to your children. You're taught that your children have a problem, a disability, a label, and that you must do something about this. And the schools, at least with some of the families that we have been in contact with, they would call on a regular basis and almost threaten the parents for not doing enough with the children. And then the parents have this pressure at work, the child comes home from school, and then you have a lot of conflict occurring. And I think what you found is that by your perspective changed, and you saw your child as a person. You saw, you were able to enter into their worlds so that you were able to have collective ideas on what could help, instead of just you're going to do this, and you're doing it over and over again even though it's not working, and the relationship with the children gets severed.
Yeah, it's actually changing priorities,
Hmm.
seeing what's really important, because we are conditioned by society
Mhm.
that kids have to have high grades in order to go into college, in order to da 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 da. Da. They even told me the end of the last school year regarding my younger child that his grade, some of his grades were low, and not because he doesn't know the material. It's because he kind of failed to complete all his assignments.
Hmm.
And you know, she told me, he needs to go to summer school in order to up his grades. Otherwise, he won't be able to go to college. But having the information I do, and my priority is very different than other parents,
Hmm.
told her that is completely okay. I am not worried about my child's future.
Hmm.
And I went to him and asked him, do you want to do summer school?
Hmm.
He said, I'm just asking because some of the grades need some perks.
Hmm.
So what happened is the last week of school, he completed all his assignments and all
Right.
his coming up.
Right.
And just because decided to take responsibility, not because mom is being annoying
Right.
or pressuring him or punishing him. And even my oldest son told me that from all his friends, they're a group of 30 kids. He said, from all my friends, I am the only friend
Mhm.
that his mom does not limit him
Mhm.
on outing because of his grade.
Mhm. Mhm. Right.
All friends that if they are low in grade or failing a class or something, the parents will say, you can't go.
Mhm.
Nothing. You have to stay home and do your homework. And I
Mhm.
never said that. I said, it's your problem. It's your
Mhm.
responsibility.
Mhm.
If you want to succeed, it's on you.
Mhm. Mhm. You know, I think, like picking up from where David was talking is that, you know, these children do find their way. I think they're told, I've had parents coming in and saying, if I don't put my child on medication now, then their brains are not going to form right. They're being told this by their pediatrician. And so they're very afraid not to put the children on medication because there's this window that if they don't put them on the medication, then something life changing will happen that they can't go back and redo. And, I just think that, you know, your philosophy has been incredibly successful and that you have been able to witness for yourself that, as you said, it's a long process, right, in raising children, but they go through so many different changes and they always come out doing spectacular. Um,
And you
because
always told me that. I couldn't see it years ago
Mhm.
when I first met you. I couldn't see how the result would be spectacular. And you always told me that. And you
Mhm.
were
Mhm. Mhm. Well, I think again, it's the dominant discourse, right? It's the it's what we're listening to that is success. So like there was somebody else that we were talking to a couple months ago that um has did a few podcasts and they were talking about in their podcast that their peers in school were maybe, like 5 or 6 years younger than they were, but they were all on medication. And she found out about that because they were in some small groups and they're just kind of, where you're talking in small groups and just introducing yourself to each other. And people were defining themselves based on being bipolar or ADHD or neurodivergent, and that all of her peers had these fears that they couldn't do college, that they had to have, extra help to do college, and they didn't have that confidence in themselves. And this came from someone that in their first few years of college, when they were younger, there was a bit of time before they picked up college again. And sometimes when we're younger, we don't think we can do something. But when we get a little bit older, we're like, yeah, I can do this. It's just like some really hard studying, but I can do it. And so, this person was talking about that it was difficult to see all these people seeing disabilities when indeed those disabilities might be questionable.
And also the fact that you're on automatic course from school to college to,
Mhm.
you're brainwashed to do that because if you don't, there's something wrong with you.
Mhm.
And I always resented that course. I'm like, why is it a has to be? Why people can't just try something else?
Mhm.
The kids don't want to go to college and get into debt for the rest of their lives and maybe study something they don't really want.
Mhm.
Why would they just want to take a year and travel
Mhm,
or
mhm,
go to work or learn some kind of a profession.
mhm,
They don't go to college. But
mhm,
here, especially here in America, more than any other country I've seen,
mhm,
if you don't go to college, there's something is wrong with you.
mhm,
So it's a brainwashing society to get you into all this debt. And I
mhm,
told my kids, don't go to college if you're gonna end up in debt. I'd rather you not go to college.
mhm,
Find a job that will pay for your college.
mhm,
That's what it takes. But don't enslave yourself to the system.
mhm, mhm,
That's why I'm very happy that my son got the the financials
mhm.
because I told him God will help you.
Yeah.
Everything will work in your way.
Mhm,
Just be yourself, do the best that you can, and everything will be fine. But if you chose a different path and decide to join the army or go to work, I'll be fine with that. I wouldn't resent him for any, I would respect any decision he would make.
mhm. Yeah. I think that just what you're saying is just so important that they have the backing of the parents, because I saw so many parents coming in for so many years that because they felt that they were being themselves bullied by, you know, um, needing their children to do this or that or perform in certain ways or whatever, um, that, in turn, they kind of were accidentally bullying their own children into certain grades or different things. I remember sharing with you, and that when it came around to raising my children, I was like, because again, hearing a lot of these stories of what created a lot of conflicts and families, you're like, as a clinician, like, I don't know if I'm going to follow those stories. And so I can remember like not using certain words in my home. And so one wasn't failure. We didn't use the word failure. We used a word like a learning experience. There was no need to use certain words. And it was so easy. I think it was in first grade that I was doing sight words. And someone said to me, like, why is this so important to you about the sight words? And I was like, I just needed someone to say that, right? I mean, I think that maybe even if we had like um, groups for parents where we could just be talking about these types of things, we want our children, of course, to do the best that they can, but we want them to be holistically happy human beings. And if it's always dependent on whether I have the right behavior or the right grade, how can you be happy?
And it's okay for them to sometimes be lazy and not to do the best that they can.
Mm-hmm. Right. Right.
We're not always perfect.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I used to think about, because I used to do a lot of work in the schools, and when I was a younger clinician, and you would just think that the things that they were asking these children to do, the parents couldn't do. Like, could you really ignore people that were saying these things to you at work? And how long could you ignore it? Like,
And you shouldn't.
mm-hmm, right, 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 right. Because how do you teach? Let's just say, how do you teach children self-esteem, self-worth when we're allowing them to be in environments that aren't conducive to that? Um, and it's just, these are precious children, and every child has the same, I think, the same opportunities when they're born. But if we do see the only through the lens of a diagnosis, then we're going to view that much differently.
Yeah, and with all the respect, I don't have a lot of trust, even in the medical field. I think that the people behind it are also conditioned to certain agenda.
Mhm. Well, it makes you think about, like, I'm a lot older than you, but I think about my grandmother, and I was talking about somebody this the other day, just, that the type of product she used to even to wash things, it was very more natural. And just seeing how things have changed, throughout the years, I think that this is a whole another podcast to kind of get on that, but I think you're right. But I do. So if you had like advice for parents that were where you were in the very beginning, or where you were at times when you had lots of people telling you that you were wrong, what what advice would you have for parents today?
The best advice I can give is take responsibility. Think of your kids as your own reflection. And if it's the same, I think I told you that story. If you look in a mirror, you wake up in the morning, you look in the mirror, and your hair is all messy and your clothes are all wrinkled, you don't yell at the mirror. You
Mhm,
go and change and you fix your hair.
mhm,
Your kids are your mirror
mhm,
and they misbehave, then look at yourself and
mhm,
see, what am I doing? What am I saying that is causing this reaction?
mhm,
So
mhm,
when it's the hardest thing for anybody to do is to lower their ego
mhm,
and to humble up and to realize that we are responsible for ourselves and for the reaction of others.
mhm,
So if I want either my kids or anybody else change the way they treat me, is I have to change myself
mhm,
and work on my own faults
mhm,
first, and then try to see the kids, lower yourself to their height and
mhm,
look at the world from their lens. And if you're asking your kids to do something, make sure you do it first.
mhm,
If you're asking them to listen to you, you listen first. And if you're asking them not to yell, don't yell at them.
mhm,
So if you do just that, that is a whole process that will make a big difference.
mhm, mhm. Yeah. It's so, e- e- even though it might be a long process raising children, it doesn't have to be complex. And, I think of the same things that we teach within this theoretical orientation that we use, and that is we listen to our clients. We listen to what they want. We don't go in thinking that, oh, I have this expert mind and I know what's best for them. And I think that what you were describing is just you know taking into consideration the needs and the wants, and how do we help them achieve that. And I think when you say this is hard for parents to learn this type of theoretical orientation that we espouse, it is hard for clinicians that have been in the field for a while, because they have, it is hard to, when you go to school for maybe 12 years, it's hard to humble yourself, right? That I don't have all the answers. And I love it when I go into a physician and they'll say that, you know, like, I'm not really sure what I had that happen to me recently, that I'm not really sure if I can come up with anything clever, but I can promise you that I'll care. I'm like, that was real, I think that's the only physician I've ever heard that from, actually, in words. And it was so helpful. So maybe if we took that position in this world between all sorts of different relationships, that would help. Because what we train our clinicians is that they must take the time to care and to listen, and the time. That these are human beings that we're talking with, and they aren't just a client, but they have real life suffering that's going on. And so it's our responsibility to take calls maybe when it's not convenient for us, or to take the extra time, or to make appointments in between appointments, because life is not structured. It flows, and we have to be there with the client to help them, so that when you were talking about, like, that you want to be with your children until they don't need you anymore, like, it's the same thing for us, although in your case they will always need you, but until we're not needed. And there's a time that we aren't needed, and I'm sure that that sometimes you think that you're always going to need that. We will talk actually to some of our clients, and we'll say, like, some point in time you're going to, like, be like, this is over, and we don't need your assistant. And they'll say things like, oh, well, we always want to have your assistants, but they really don't want to have our assistants, because they don't want to have those challenges within their lives. And then they take it over themselves and do wonderful jobs, because it's not our ideas, it's our ideas collectively, collaboratively, that I think help our clients change.
Yeah, you guys are doing God's work.
Well, it surely has been a mission for us to help people heal in ways that they feel respected and valued, and that we don't create more harm for them coming in. So I'm going to thank you so much for being with us today. And I'm going to stop the recording right now. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.